So, what I saw today, um, something related to the heart and to the soul. And whatever I am going to depict now, it's only like the first impressions almost of this. So, I feel there is much to continue to understand and unfold about this. So, um, these first impressions might only be like an outline of how things might actually be. And of course, for sure, and as always, this is not the truth. Truth cannot be portrayed in words. If we are speaking with words, if we are reading, if we are listening to words, then of course we are listening with the mind. The mind is not constructed to understand truth. So ultimately, what we understand with the mind can only be fragments of the truth, perspectives more of the truth, but not the truth itself. Because the truth itself, it appears to me that it can only be experienced, lived. The truth within me can experience itself, if that makes sense. But the mind cannot experience truth, in my opinion. So, but we can, like the analogy of a map and a territory, we can describe the truth using words. We can describe reality for the mind to understand it. So, similar to a map, we can describe things on the map so our minds can know how to surf this virtual representation of reality. So, words are made for our minds to understand and to virtually grasp how they can surf and move through this virtual realm, through this virtual representation of reality. And similar to a map, once you understand and you can read the map, you can move in the territory using the map. So the mind is not made to experience truth, but it is made to somehow be able to surf in a virtual representation of that truth. And so our beingness, our body and our beingness can then, our mind then can lead the body, and the body can actually experience truth. But only the body, in my opinion, can experience truth. The mind cannot experience truth. So we can't understand truth with the mind, but we can experience it with our bodies. So in this respect, what I'm going to say now, of course, there are only charts for our own minds. The body will not understand what I'm saying now, because the body, first of all, in my opinion, the body already knows this. The body, in my opinion, I think the body is God, disguising itself as any other physical thing. So the body already knows truth. It's only the mind that hasn't had its map completed, so it doesn't act. It's still learning. The part of us that's learning, it's only the mind, which creates a map of reality, a virtual map of reality, and not the body who already knows reality. The body already knows everything, all the truth, beyond realities, beyond creation. The body, I see it as being the embodiment of God, of the living truth. I think this is why now it just came, because I think this is why it's sometimes said that the body is my temple or something like that. The house of God. I actually see the body as being the embodiment of God on earth. So my words now are just words for the mind. Perhaps they may or may not help complete some charts on our mental maps, some portions of our maps. So, what I'm going to say now about the soul and about the heart is just a first preview, first outline of what I'm seeing. So, it appears that the sense of reality, what makes reality real, that sensation, that not, it's beyond a sensation, but that sense of reality. When you touch an object or you smell a flower, how much is that experience? How much does that experience feel real? The realness, the sense of realness within an experience, I feel it comes from the heart. I feel the heart is a channel to the true real reality, to the true beingness that we actually are. And I feel that as much as one has this channel opened, then whatever experience it has in the physical realm, that experience will unfold as its truest version of itself. So if you go and smell a flower and you really have your heart channel free, then you can really actually embody and really be aware of the truest essence of that experience of smelling a flower. And I think there are degrees. So as the heart can be open or closed in various degrees. For example, I think many of us can relate to this experience when we were children. The world looked and felt much more vivid. The world looked and felt much more real. Nothing particularly feels to have changed in the mundane usual experiences from when we were a child to now when we see ourselves as adults, but something definitely feels different in the way we perceive things. Because I've heard this from several people describing how when they were children, reality felt so much more vivid, so much more intense, more real, more intimate in a way, more joyful, but not necessarily emotional joyful, but a sort of like beingness, joyful beingness about being alive. And that sensation of really not knowing when time passes, like time felt irrelevant, experiences were felt to be so rich, so vivid when we were children. And I also had this experience as a child, and I've heard, as I said, this experience depicted by other people as well. And not only my theory, but what I'm seeing about this is that when children have a sort of like natural openness to their heart, the heart of a child feels naturally more open than the heart of an adult. And I think that it is by this channel of the heart being opened that reality feels much more real when we are children. And as our hearts tend to close more and more by growing up, let's say, and becoming adults, I think that, of course, reality becomes much more dull. So the same experience of smelling a flower, of just walking on the street or touching an object, the experience doesn't change in a way. It's the same experience. You touch a wall, let's say. But when you touched it as a child, it felt much more vivid, real, intense. It had meaning, a lot of meaning behind it. You could almost, some children might even say that they could feel the wall, what the wall feels, or one could communicate in a way with the world. It would be this type of like symbiosis between the observer and the observed. It was not like the limits between where I end when I start and where I end were not so clearly defined as a child, and there was this much more vividness, intimacy, closeness with the experienced. And without knowing, I feel that I could describe now this experience when I look back at it. I could describe it as the actual embodiment of love. But like everything felt like love. I felt in love with my body. I remember I felt in love with the walls, with the objects, with the animals, with plants, with the seasons, with the light of the sun, without even knowing that that was love, because that's what I find now to be interesting about when I look back. Because as a child, I think many of us were just swimming in this love, but we weren't actually aware that that is love, because there was no other contrast, no other thing to contrast it. It was just the natural way of being, feeling love for many, many things, feeling natural love for oneself, for one's hands, for smelling things, from seeing other persons, like that type of mesmerized look that children have, and curiosity comes from that natural love that stems from their heart without them even being conscious about it. And as we grow up and our hearts tend to naturally close down, that curiosity tends to diminish, and that mesmerizing look about looking at everything with those open, curious eyes, the eyes of love, basically, uh, tend to also, our eyes tend to become dull and foggier, and we tend to then think, oh yeah, but I know this is just a wall. Oh, I know this is just a object. And this is just my body. Yeah, I know it's just a hand. I do stuff with it. So everything tends, as we grow up, tends to become dull, and we don't actually can't point why that happens like that. I've talked to people, and I remember that many of them would say that they don't actually know what's changed and why, and if they would ever be able to go back to that instance. And I think it's the heart, but I think it's not the heart in the way we imagine it to be. It's not something that we can have. It's not like today I can decide to open my heart. I don't think it works that way. I don't think people have a control over how, if their hearts are opened or closed in a way. Not the mind. The mind, I don't think the mind has any control over how the heart is opened or closed. I think it's actually one of the reasons for the heart seemingly appearing to close off is us moving our awareness into the mind, from the body into the mind, and that's the body-mind split. I think when we were children, our awareness was fully embodying the body. We felt so inside the body, so alive in our own body, in our own hands, in our own legs. We were inside the body in a much more degree than later, when we slowly started going with our awareness inside our minds. And when our awareness leaves the body, it creates this kind of detachment. The body feels to remain without life energy, alone, let's say. And our awareness goes into the mind, which the mind feels like this invisible entity, which then starts to control the body and operate the body, but from a mechanical point of view. So our awareness, I think, when When our awareness was in the body, I don't think our awareness was actually trying to control the body. I don't think our awareness was there inside the body to actually become like a machine operator of the body. Because the body, I don't think it was seen as a machine at all when we were children. I don't think we saw our bodies as machines, but we saw our bodies like as wonders, like, whoa, like, what's this? And I think when our awareness was in our body, our awareness, which feels like this essence of true, I could call awareness either life energy, either God, either living force, either true love, or something around these lines. Because awareness, it's like, it feels like this neutral thing that has no polarity to it, and it just energizes things. So if awareness is in the body gets energized. If awareness is in the mind gets energized. If awareness is anywhere else, for example, I don't know, in some project that we build, in something that we construct, then that project gets in some relationship and or something like this, then that thing gets energized. I have something on my nose. Okay. And so I think when we were children and our awareness was inside our bodies, I think our awareness was naturally neutral and it was just energizing the body, but it was not trying to control the body. It was giving its entire trust, let's say, and energy to the body as the body being the intelligent one. The body, leaving the body to conduct itself, leaving the body, the intelligence of the body to actually operate the body, like trusting the body to actually know when it wants to eat, when it wants to sleep, what it wants, how it wants to move, what it wants to do. So basically, I'm seeing that our awareness was actually giving itself to the body fully without trying to control the body at all. And so the body was so fully energized to be itself as a body, and it was so fully, let's say, connected because it had this energy. It was so fully connected with everything around. Our body was connected with the body of the world, with the body of that plant, with the body of the cloud, the air, the sun, everything. There was this connection, permeating connection, because life energy was inside the body, giving the body, let's say, the full the full ownership and, let's say, directing capacities. So it was basically letting the body direct itself and do its own thing. But when awareness moved into the mind, then the mind took control over the body, and the mind said, oh, well, wait, the body does not know how to properly run into this world. I need to conduct the body. I need to become like a CEO that actually tells the body how it needs to act, how it needs to react, how it needs to perform in the world, because the body apparently doesn't know how to do that. So the mind, in a way, takes authorship over the intelligence of the body and says that, oh, I know better what is better for the body. So when our awareness went into the mind, because it happened, this mind-body split, which I think different theories could be emitted for why our awareness flew from the body into the mind. Some could describe it as trauma. Some could describe it as like the general human uprising, which actually detaches our life energy from the body and makes us move into to our minds, like all this mental training of school and whatever. But I personally have a different opinion and theory about this. I think it was just designed this way in this current human experience. I think this was the trail of the experience, how it was designed to be. I think it inevitably was designed for us to experience this mind-body split. I think it had its role, and it was put here in a way with a purpose. Because basically the mind-body split, I see it as a sort of like separation from God. Because when awareness was in the body, I think life energy was with God, because God was the body in a way. So there was no separation between life energy and life itself, if we would call life itself to be God. So there was life itself energizing life itself. So it was one-on-one. There was unity in a way when awareness was into the body, was energizing the body. But when awareness, let's say, was went into the mind, let's say, then there was this separation between, created within life itself. It was this apparent separation where the mind thinks of itself as something different than life itself. It thinks of something that needs to direct life itself, because life itself cannot direct itself properly. So the mind is like this entity constructed to think that it becomes a manager over life itself. And of course, life itself being neutral, it allows that. It allows for that to happen. So the idea, I think, is that after awareness has moved into the mind, of course, the mind became energized with life force to be what it was and what it is. To be an entity that feels separate from life itself. To imagine a world of separation. To imagine a world of something else than life itself. Because as I said, the mind thinks of itself as an entity which is separate from life itself, which stays somewhere up high and views life and, okay, I'll direct this thing, I'll manage it, I'll shape it the way I think it needs to be. So of course the mind then imagines its own separation. The mind imagines itself to be not life. It's just an imagination. It feels like an imagination. It feels completely like an imagination, like a illusion. Of course, there is also life there. So we could say that life imagines being not life by imagining itself to be the mind. So when awareness or life energy went into the mind, of course, it started to energize what not life could mean. So this is what we experience when then we move more and more into our adulthood. Most of us experience what does it mean to be not life. What does it mean to be dead, in a way? Because death, I personally see death not as something that is occurring when the body, how could you even say that? The body, let's say, stops appearing like a manifestation. I'm basically not seeing that as death. I'm seeing death as the experience of not life, whatever not life could mean. And I feel this happens during our, what we call our human living life. I think most of our living human life is actually the experience of death itself. We are experiencing how it is to be not life. And we are walking around and we think we are alive, but in my opinion, this is the experience of death. And I think after the body stops being manifested here, of course, the awareness comes back to, let's say, a more natural way of being, which could even be described as life itself. So after, let's say, the so-called death that the human mind considers it as death, I feel that a more real version of life actually starts, because awareness comes to its senses, let's say, much more once again. So I think what happens if we would get back to the idea of why things appear real and why things sometimes don't appear so vivid, so real, it's, as I said, this idea of the heart being opened. So I think what happens when the awareness starts to flee away from the body and goes into the mind, I think what happens is that our heart channel that is usually naturally open when awareness is inside our bodies, we view life through our hearts without even realizing. That's the thing. Because you don't realize that's love. Because it's so natural, it's so quiet, it's so intimate, it's so natural and mundane in a way. The mind doesn't realize that's actually love. When awareness is inside the body, we naturally experience things through the lens of love. And when awareness goes into the mind, we naturally experience things around through the lens of, we could call it hate or rejection, or just opacity, or just dullness. Just not seeing life itself the way it is. Of course, because the mind, as it was just described, it just feels like an entity created to experience what not life, non-life could look like. So of course, when awareness goes into the mind, what I personally see that it's occurring is that the heart can never be closed. This is what I intensely see, that our hearts are forever opened. If we wouldn't have our hearts open, our body could not sustain itself in this reality. I can even say it, I can even portray it like the body is a manifestation of the heart. So without the heart being opened, there would be no physical manifestation of the body. It's like the heart projects the body outwards. It's like the body is an extension, a projection from the heart, which appears real for everybody. This is why all people have a heart and everyone has a body, because it's like the heart is in the middle and it emanates the body outwards, and we interact with the body, but every body that we see is just an emanation of their own hearts. So our heart can never be truly closed. It can never close itself, not even to a small degree. But what I see that happens is that when awareness splits and a part of awareness moves inside the mind, is like something, a sort of like virtual heart is created. Because when awareness goes into the mind, we still need to have a body that is manifested, and we still need to have a body that we can operate and use into the world. But as I said, when we move our awareness into the mind, the body stops being the full authority over its own self. So the body doesn't run itself according with its own intelligence. And now the mind takes over the body and drives the body. So the mind becomes the authority of the over the body now. And what happens is that, in my opinion, at the first moment of the split, when the split happens and awareness splits from being fully embodying the physical body and going the slightest degree inside the mind, probably, I don't know, I would even equate it for the fetus stage when we were in the mother's womb. I think that's when the split even happens. I think the split might even happen in the moment when we come into this fetus, if that makes sense. I think the split starts from that moment, even for some of us at least. So when that first moment of the split happens and awareness flees a bit of itself from the body to the mind, I think that's the first moment when a virtual copy of the entire human needs to be created. I think everything that happens, I think we never get split, basically. I think the split is only happening within an imagined self, which is never real. I think there is never a split. We never split from ourselves. Awareness never splits, but it imagines its own splitting. It imagines its own separation. I don't think life ever stops being what life is, but it can imagine being not life. So I think that everything that happens after the first moment of split is like an illusion. We start owning some illusory bodies, some virtual bodies. And in those virtual bodies, we play as if we are separated from life itself. And as we move further and further in the sense of separation, this is how much we move further and further in the sense of virtuality. Our bodies become more and more illusions, more and more virtual entities containing a mind, of course, as well, operating the body. So as much as awareness moves into the mind being a holographic, illusory entity created by life itself to experience this dream where life itself is something different than life itself. So life itself creates the mind to experience this scenario. When life itself moves inside this scenario, of course it moves into the mind. So whenever the first moment the mind is energized for the first time, that's the first instance, the first split of the real original human body, and then now you have a virtual human body. And the mind, which got the first fuel of energy, and it was the first initialized for the first time, and it got the first life energy surging in it, the mind starts to see itself, oh, I have this body, like it's my body. But that's the first virtual image, because before that there was no mind seeing the body, oh, this is my body. It was just the body being itself in perfect unity and flow with everything else as life itself. So there was no idea that this is my body. There was the body being with life. And there was awareness fully energizing the body and being with life. But there was no idea, awareness was not saying, oh, this is my body. Awareness already knew that this is the body. And that's the body, and that's other body, and that's another body. But it was the body, this body, and that body, and that body, and the world, and the plant, and the sun. And there were all bodies, and the awareness knew that. And the bodies knew that because they had full awareness in them. But the first second when awareness split and life, as I said, as it was said, went into the mind started becoming aware of itself. Oh, I'm this body. Like I have this body. Now the first moment of ownership started to appear within life, where life experienced like, oh, this is me. I have this body. It's my body. Like the first moment of ownership started to come. And this type of sense of ownership, I think it's what we describe as individuality. We think we are individuals that own something. We own a body, or we own a mind, or we own life energy, or we own life, or we own a soul, or we own a spirit. But we think we own it. It's something that it's like a possession, that we own a portion of life, that somebody owns something, a portion of life. And I think that's the first moment when the mind becomes aware. It becomes aware, oh, this is my body. But the body that it becomes aware in that moment, it's not the actual true body. It's like a virtual copy has been created of the same body, but now that copy is a copy that the mind sees. And so it's a virtual body that is being created. And as much as that awareness moves more and more into the mind, and the mind gets more and more energized, and the sense of ownership and the sense of individuality and the sense of I, it's my body, it's my life, it's my thing, it's my property, it's my thing, gets more and more increased, then the virtuality of that body and the virtuality of that specific life becomes increasingly solid. So it becomes more and more virtual. It's like a fractal. And as much as the sense of I increases, and as much as the mind is energized and takes power of being an entity of itself, this is how much things become quite virtual. The virtuality of things becomes more and more solid. So you move from the first instance of the copy, which is virtual, and it's a copy of the real body, which had no sense of I. It was just the body and life itself, being one with life itself. And then you move into the first virtual, when awareness split from the body and went just a bit into the mind and energized. The first instance when the mind was energized was, whoa, it was seeing the first virtual, a split, and a copy was made of that body, and an image of that body was created inside the mind. So the mind saw an image, a representation of the body. It didn't saw the body. Because the mind has no access to, in my opinion, from what I'm seeing, the mind has no access to our real bodies. Because our real bodies can only be experienced without a zero mind. That's what I'm seeing. When we drop our mind, that's when we actually understand what we are as first the life within our bodies. So that's when the first virtual copy was created inside the mind, a virtual representation of that same body, but now it was just an image. The mind didn't had access to the full body. It never had access to our bodies fully. It had access to a virtual representation, a virtual image of the body, which was created inside the mind. So whenever the mind started to see the body, oh, this is my body, but it was just seeing, like playing with a holographic virtual representation of the body, which existed inside the mind. So the mind was adimensional, had no dimensions to it, because the mind would see its own representations within itself. So it had no dimension to it. It's just the mind. It's just this space, mental space, where the mind, oh, this is my body, but it would look at virtual representations of copies and images that were created inside of it. And then, as much as the mind became more and more energized with life energy, driving more and more life energy into the mind, then the virtual body became more and more personal and more solid, and the images became much more vivid and real, but real and vivid from the perspective of the mind. So they became actually more and more, from the perspective of true life, they became more and more virtual. So this is why with time, as an adult would grow up, what would happen is that that heart within us that would continue to remain open, that beingness would still remember, hey, but I remember when things would appear to be much more vivid and real, and I felt this love, and I felt this thing that I cannot describe when I was a child. Reality felt different, but the person cannot understand why reality became dull with time as it grew up. Because it has the mind now that took over its own memories and everything, and the mind can alter and create any story, any memory. It can alter memories, can create memories from the scratch. It can mix memories. It can do whatever it wants in a way inside the mind of the person. So as much as the person, as the being, I mean, brought life energy to the mind, and the mind created all these stories, and the stories of society and how things should be and everything, and relationships and everything. But there, that's the thing, because beingness never changed. Life never changed. Life still remained an instance, a greater instance of life. I see it basically continuing to remain as itself, as that initial body, and that initial life, permanently life, that initial part, that real original part of us, that real original us, in a way, never changes, in my opinion. I never see it changing. It's nothing actually changed. We just enter into this holographic virtual representation called mind, or mental virtual simulation, or game, or whatever, in which we played all sorts of things, but yeah, never actually changed as our real beingness. So right now I am a mind viewing this body, but at the same time my beingness is viewing itself as well. So I'm two things in a way. At the same time, I'm a mind viewing my body, but I'm also beingness being the body. So the beingness that is being the body, it's still itself. It was always itself. It forever remains unaltered. And this beingness can recognize that, oh, like I kind of loved when I could interact with the wall and the trees and with their beingness rather than with their minds. I kind of loved when I was a child, and I would be able to interact like with this type of closeness and intimacy with the things around me. Beingness always remembers, because beingness never forgot, actually. There was never an instance where beingness forgot itself. Only the mind forgot, or created a story that we forgot who we are. In my opinion, we never forgot who we are, because what we really are never forgot what it is, better said. Beingness never forgot what it is, because beingness can only be itself, can never seem to be able to depart from itself, can only imagine itself departing from itself. So our minds felt that, oh, I don't know who I am, I don't have memories of what happened before my birth. But these seem like, all of these seem like mental stories. Beingness, the beingness within me, it's always the same. It's always ever present. And sometimes during, this is my personal theory, that in there are life events. First of all, I think our experience into the mind was just like a sojourn. It was just like a travel, like a journey. I feel that it was from the start planned to have a beginning and an end. So we never came to the mind to remain lost here. So there would always the the the, the blueprint, I mean, the design, the plan, whatever we could call it, was to experience ourselves for a moment, for some time, let's say, what it is to be not life, what it is to forget ourselves or to. But it was always planned for us to return in a way to what we are. Because as I said, what we are never changes. So how can we not be what we are if we already are that? But that's one thing. Um, so I think because the plan never was to go into the mind and to remain stuck there, because the mind, as I said, I see it as an illusory entity. So how much can you stay in a dream until you run off, until you feel the dream has ran out of possibilities that could actually continue to entertain you? Like at some point, even if the dream itself was the entire creation from the beginning of it, not only the creation of this universe, but creation as its own entity, even if that was when we stepped into the dream, even if creation felt endless with possibilities, even that can, let's say, feel to have been completed at some point. A soul or an entity, a being can feel, okay, I kind of experienced it. I kind of got what I wanted to get out of it, even though there is no sense of time, or we can't say like it spent millions of years or eons of time, or because there is no sense of time in creation as well. You can see it's a fractal, it can be eternal, it can have no beginning or end in a way, but it's still a dream. So I think there was a moment when a soul or a being would feel that, okay, I kind of concluded my experience inside this illusion, inside this cosmic mind, inside this creation or whatever. And I think there are experiences then when the illusion starts to crack, when the soul, like when the being kind of experiences it and it kind of finishes its journey into the dream world. Of course the dream starts to kind of crack, and that's when I think there are other designed systems and other designed creations created with the purpose of slowly bringing awareness back from the mind into the body. And I think that some of these systems or creations or dreams can be called what we reference and describe as traumatic events or painful events. I think traumas only feel like traumas for the mind, because the mind is slowly losing awareness and life energy, because life energy starts to remove inside the body. And I think this is what traumas are in a way, from a certain level, as described from a certain level. Because I could describe traumas in other ways from other levels as well, like blocked energy or freezed energy or energy that has not been integrated or lived, or but that's the same thing as saying that it's awareness going again from the mind into the body, integrating again. So at first the mind split from the body as an entity of its own, but now the mind merges back within the body, within the intelligence of the body. And I think what we call traumas are just events, systems already designed to make us, to release our awareness from the mind and to melt it back, to let it sink back, to melt it back into the body. Because it's like awareness was this energy that got freezed. It got trapped, let's say, into the mind, as I said. But now the mind needs to release that, and the awareness is like slowly melting off, so slowly warming up again and melting into the body and pouring into the body back again. And I think traumas are just those freezed energies, freezed awareness that are being stored within the virtual body, and because they are stored there, and we already, our being already moved into that part of the journey in which it comes back to itself. So those codes are activated of, okay, we're going out of the illusion right now, we're going outside, we are going back within the real, we are going from the dream to the real. So our awareness, our being has already, let's say, authorized that, okay, I have kind of concluded my journey here in creation, in the dream world, and I'm now slowly coming back into the real body outside of any virtual representations of it, and I'm coming back to myself as myself, and my real self with the big S, I mean, not the mind self, mental self, or ego. So once a beingness has authorized this, of course, one enters into that part of the journey in which wherever there is freezed energy that is being stored in the virtual body, those freezed energies will start to appear like they will not be alright. Like they will seem, okay, this is a freezed energy, we need to melt it back. So whenever beingness would start to identify freezed energies, beingness from that point on, when it took the decision, okay, we're going back, it will start to identify freezed energies and it will not authorize them anymore. So if those freezed energies are not authorized, because before that point they were authorized, our freezed energies would be almost like the fuel with which the mind could create further mental realms. So it was a creative power before beingness decided to come back to itself. It was a freezed energy, was a creative power that would drive even more awareness, even more creative power in the mental realms, in the virtual realms. So, but after the shift happened again and beingness decided, okay, I'm coming back, then those freezed energies didn't appear to have authorization anymore. And then, of course, what before was considered a creative power, now it was considered like, no, this is not all right. And we consider them as traumas now, because, oh, this is this freezed energy inside my body. Oh, this is this freezed energy inside my body. I need to integrate this energy and this energy. And this is the same as saying that awareness got freezed in those patterns of the mind, but now is being melted and coming back into our real body. So our virtual selves are like vanishing one after another with each trauma, let's say, that we integrate and accept to live back again. Because that's the thing. Those freezed energies were keeping our awareness into these virtual bodies, and we're keeping our awareness seeing something, different versions of the body and the human that they were not the actual body. And now, like, it was those freezed energies were keeping us seeing ourselves as something we are not, if that makes sense. And now, of course, when that I am not is not no longer authorized by beingness, of course that now we need to look at those portions of ourselves, those frozen energies. We need to look at them now. We need to look at all those false selves in a way, and we need to integrate them, and we need to accept them back within us. And then that's what pain actually, that's what I think the mind calls pain to be pain. Those type of freezed energies that now need to be released, melted, and from the perspective of beingness, they just need to be integrated back within the self. So it's just a sort of like effort now to merge back the mind with the body, because it was the split, but now we need to merge the virtual selves with the true self. So it's a work to actually look at a false self, at a false version of ourselves that feels even painful, because we deeply within we know that that version is not us, but we still need to adhere it as us. So now those versions need to be loved in a way. Those versions need to be brought back and integrated and accepted to be looked at. And this type of effort and work is what the mind considers to be pain, because for the mind it's like, oh, I need to let go of this. Oh, and I need to integrate back with the body. Oh, and how do I do that? So it's a pain, it's an effort for the mind. And it tries to postpone it, it tries to avoid it, it tries to deny it. And as much as it tries to deny it and it tries to postpone it, the work becomes more and more evident from the level of beingness, which calls for it. Like, no, you need to do it because we're coming back. And it becomes this sense of urgency, and the mind feels the signals more and more, and so it tries to deny them more and more, and the sense of pain increases more and more. And so the mind could have, and I think it experiences uh, like cycle of increasing like its own rejection to deal with those false self and to release those energies. And as it refused to do that, those energies and the signal to do that increased, and then it rejected again and the signal increased again. And yeah, the sensation of pain would have increased with the rejection for the mind to do this work. But now, one last thing that I feel to add is like whenever the whenever the whenever the mind body split happened, and whenever awareness moved more and more into the mind and the virtual copies of the body were created, and the mind became more and more aware, oh, this is my body, oh, this is how important life is, or oh, this is how vital my life is, how vital and fragile my body is, and or whatever stories it created about the body and about life and what it was perceiving. Coming back to the heart, our hearts, I feel and I see them as continuing permanently to be the same as open. But what happened is that when these virtual bodies and when awareness stepped into the mind and this virtual body was created, it was created with a virtual heart. And that virtual heart is what we call a soul. So the thing is that the soul took over like an eclipse, took over our hearts. It's like that which in our real body would be the true heart, in the virtual bodies would be called a soul. And this is why many people say that I feel my soul here, because the soul, I see it like something that eclipses the heart. It's like, and as you go more and more into virtual selves, your soul becomes increasingly potent. And as much as your soul becomes increasingly potent, this is how much it is potent in covering your true heart. So the heart is there beneath all souls. So in a way, the soul is the virtual representation of the heart. And whereas the heart operates with this living life force energy from where awareness pours into the body, the soul operates with, I could call them like feelings and emotions, which are in a way mental. They are like mental derivatives. It's like mental energy in a way behind them. It's like the soul energy is a sort of dream energy. And it's the energy, it's what awareness becomes when it embodies a virtual self. When awareness comes into the dream world, into the virtual world of the mind, awareness becomes this dream energy, which becomes the life force energy within the dream. And that energy is channeled through the soul. So each virtual self has a soul, and as you increase in virtuality, you increase in soul potency, and that's how much the soul then has this enormous capacity of emitting life dream energy. I mean, inside the dream, we would call it life energy. but that's not true life energy. That's the life energy within the dream. It's like energy to create dreams, energy to become a creator of dreams. That's the soul. It's the creator of dreams. And the soul and the mind become quite entangled. It's almost like one and the same entity. It's no split between the soul and the mind. The mind is the soul and the soul is the mind in a way. And I think that even in our day-to-day life, we can observe how you can look at an object and you can see it with your soul and you can have your feelings about it. But if you stay, like if you really observe, you will see that those feelings, they have a sense of ownership to them. It feels like, oh, these are my feelings towards this thing. These are my emotions. Whereas in the true nature, in the true natural reality, it feels like when the heart, like how the heart would feel about an object or a thing. It would feel like it's non-feelings. I don't know how to explain it, but the heart doesn't have feelings and emotions. It's just a sense of beingness. It's just the heart looks at something, but not as oh, this is my perspective of that thing. These are my feelings of that. These are my emotions about it. It's just like, oh, this is the energy between this thing and that thing. And the heart is like, this is the beingness right now happening between this thing and that thing, between this body and that body. There is this energy flowing between us, and both entities know that this energy that flows between us is not mine or yours. It's just the energy that flows between us, and we both recognize it at the same time. And is zero feeling of ownership because it is recognized as the life that it is. It's just this joyful sensation of, like an orgasmic sensation of, oh my God, I can't believe this is the energy that is created and moves through us right now. It's like this, oh, this feeling of mesmerizing. It's beyond, oh, it's like orgasmic sensation of, oh God, I can't believe this is what we share right now. That this is what is happening between us right now. Even if you look at a tree or at a stone or at your body, or it's like this sensation of, you know, that what you're seeing doesn't happen because of you. You're not an entity separated from what you're seeing in a way. You are your own life form, and that's its own life form as well. But you know, you exist only because this exists as well, and this exists only because you exist as well. And just this mesmerizing, how else could you call it than love? This thing of just, there is nothing to say, there is nothing to feel, there is just this awe. And permanent is just, it's not a separate feeling. It's not something that now stops. Oh, I'm feeling this thing, but now it stops. And tomorrow I'm feeling a different thing. It's like, it's this permeating love, this permeating life that leaves everything in awe. Not only me or whoever observes, but everything is in awe in front of what is happening. Or something like that. These are just human words trying to describe it, but just to make a bit of sense of how the heart, the true body with the heart open, would see things, and how the soul and the virtual body would see things. Because the virtual body with the mind and the soul would see like, oh yeah, there is so much beauty in the world. Because the soul also has beauty. The soul also feels love, but it feels like a sort of like a virtual representation of love. It would feel like, oh, I feel so much love for this thing. There is so much energy between us right now, but there is no energy between me and that other thing, or between me and that other thing, there is less energy. And between me and this thing, there is more energy. So there is this graduation, like I love this thing, but I don't love that thing. I feel attracted to that thing, but not to this thing. This is the soul. This is the virtual here. And the soul can feel pure, true love for the things it loves. But it also can feel pure, true hate for the other things that it hates. But in the true body, in the heart, let's say, in the true heart, there is only, how could you call it? It's other than true love, but it's love without polarity. It's love that has, it's beyond. It's like the feeling that the word love feels so little. It's just life, presence, beingness. There is no word for it. There is actually, I don't think there is a word for it in the human language. It's just the awe of existence itself. It's life owing at itself. In any form, any shape, any relation. It doesn't matter if it's a tree relating to a bug, or a tree relating to the sun, or a bug relating to a thing that eats it. It doesn't matter. It's the same awe at everything. So that's first of all, that's our real nature. And that's the main difference between the soul love and the core love. Core from cuore, heart. The heart love is this permeating. It's more than awe. There is no word. But you can feel it within, because everyone has it. The core love. Everyone has it within itself. Everyone feels it permanently, day by day, but without realizing. Because they have this filter that they don't feel it. They have this filter, this virtual self that tells them, no, I'm not loved. I don't feel that love. God doesn't love me, or this person doesn't love me, or I don't feel loved. There is their mind that tells them, no, I don't feel loved. That love is always there. Like you have it, everyone has it. It's always there, it's always present. It's the ground, it's the base of everything. All the dreams are created from it. So we all always have it. But there is this juxtaposition, there is this overlayer that is created with our virtual selves that comes with the soul, and the soul takes so much of our awareness. It's so juicy in a way. The feelings of the soul, they are so juicy. Like, it's so juicy to feel hate, and it's so juicy to feel emotional love and all other feelings. They are so juicy that our awareness gets, let's say, attracted, captured in those feelings, and we don't see the quieter one, the underlying feeling that penetrates everything, and it's always present.